What happens to women abusers in prison? Domestic violence, stalkers, just scum of the earth, women beaters. Now, it's kind of a weird situation because a lot of times relationships have a lot of domestic problems where there's guys abusing, beating his girl, toxic relationship, and he'll get arrested, but she'll come back and say, oh, it didn't happen. They'll get arrested and then back and forth nonstop till finally, the unthinkable happens and the violence escalates and he ultimately kills her and he'll be in there for murder. So you really don't see the domestic charges because he never got convicted. That happens a lot. That's why if you're ever in one of those relationships, I've seen too many dudes I was in prison with that they'll never admit it, why they truly killed her. But it was because they always beat the shit out of women and they got away with it so long. And then finally, he just was so insecure about whatever was going on that he killed her. But he can explain it as she robbed him so it's a very gray area. So if you're in a relationship like that, listen, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Snakes don't change. They just shed their skin and become bigger snakes. Now, what happens to ones that we truly know about their paperwork, aggravated stalking, strangulation on a pregnant woman, where it doesn't just say battery and they're trying to explain the situation. No, when you know for a fact that he abused a woman and beat the shit out of her, strangled her, hurt her in the worst ways possible. Now, I had a very serious incident happen that I'll get into later where a close friend of mine, Lindsay, who I grew up with, happened to be in prison with the guy who beat her with a tire iron. But before we get into that, what happens a lot is this. Organizations don't respect it. I'm sure there's some that don't care, but if they look at your paperwork and they see that you beat women, strangle women, you're a real sick fuck, you're hurting a pregnant woman, you're an abuser, it only is looked at as if, okay, this isn't a guy that just had a bad day and got into a fight or there was her ex or this drama with the brother-in-law. No. He goes after women only because he's weak. So what they do is they immediately know, one, that you are not built for the life of the penitentiary where there isn't a woman to beat, only men. So in the beginning, they'll get extorted. Now, if somebody gave them a patch, which I've seen this with the Unforgivens, they will walk around and you'll see where they get their patches on the back of their head and they'll be completely blacked out, X'd out, burnt out. And, I don't get into their business, but obviously it's Inmate.com. Everybody knows something about something, right? And, Drop, who was the head of the Unforgivens where I was at, told me, yeah, we found out he choked his pregnant woman, his girl, and that's not tolerated. We might have our internal problems, but we're cleaning house and nobody can choke a woman like that. Because one, if you're choking a pregnant woman, you're choking a child at the same time. So you're a child abuser and a woman abuser. So they will extort him, beat him, cut him, slice him, cut off his tattoo, and he's no good. Now, what happens a lot of times too is many inmates grew up in households where their mother or somebody in their family was viciously beaten. A lot of people have a lot of undiagnosed or a lot of PTSD that they don't look at it like that because that's a weakness. And I don't blame anything on anybody for the decisions I made. However, I grew up in a very dysfunctional home where I've learned as a grown man now that abuse, domestic, when they beat a woman, it isn't just physically. It could be mentally, emotionally, financially, many, many different ways. So being in a cell with somebody and seeing, what they are, you've beaten a woman multiple times to the point where it's so bad that you're in prison for it, that you hurt her, you stalked her, you strangled her, mother of your kids. You get tired. You look at that motherfucker, you can't live here. I don't want you to be here. I know your type. I've seen what you've done to the moms and the sisters that I've grown up with. And 9 times out of 10, they fold. They will get the shit beat out of them, hit with locks, X'd out, really, really extorted, beaten, and they'll never fight back, because they're not used to somebody ever fighting back. No man that has any pride in himself would ever take it to the extreme where he would strangle, stalk, beat, hurt a woman, unless it was, self-defense or, he was protecting his child. There's other situations that I've seen that are understandable. However, if you're just doing it because you're insecure or you know, you want to know where she's at or this and that. You're weak. The organizations won't respect you. We know you'll fold if the officers come in here or FBI start doing some RICO shit, whatever's going on. So it's automatic that if you have any patch, any gang affiliations that you might have got out there, because the inside runs the outside. And people out there, they run around loose like cowboys. But in there, when there's structure and there's 100% what is this guy about, and we see that, okay, come here, check this out. Let me see those tattoos, fire, how you want to get them off right now. Or, you know, a dude will just come in there and, you know, they check to see what he's about and they see it, strangulation of a pregnant woman or domestic violence, strangulation, that you can, you know, it's not able to be explained as a battery or say that, yo, shit got crazy. There's no excuse. So immediately we already know mentally, physically, you're weak. You're 100% going to be extorted. You're going to be slapped around, stabbed, beaten, and you're going to have to check in. You're going to have to pay rent. So what happens is someone like that who was once dominating a woman because he's weak and he knew that was the only person he could dominate because she probably depended on him financially, physically, mentally, and he would use and abuse it. Now here you are in prison. Why don't you act the same way? Oh, now you're paying for protection. And there's nobody on the outside that's going to help you because you beat the shit out of too many women. You burn too many bridges. So that weakness that you have is automatically looked as a green light to say, come here, give me that. Now there are gangs that will look past that. And to me, that shit is disgusting. You know, I know that the Southsiders and a lot of Mexican gangs, they do not fuck with that. They do not want to have any cowardly people in their organization, in their ranks, and that shit will go quick. They'll be checked in, sliced, and extorted immediately. Now, I've seen situations where there'll be a woman who was beaten very bad and say the dude was from a certain neighborhood. She'll reach out to some of those people in there and they'll find out, oh, you beat up my little cousin, whatever, and they'll fucking slice him, beat him, and extort him some more. Obviously, the violence that goes towards rapists and pedophiles are not the same as that because it's a very gray area. Because a lot of times, like I said before, people will still go back to the relationship, drop the charges. So by the time they get to prison, they've already committed a murder or a heinous crime on this woman, and they're describing it as a whole different way. You know what I mean? So that's why you have to run from those scumbag piece of shits. You know what I mean? There's no excuse ever. And they get extorted. It's immediate weakness. Now there's gangs that don't care and they look at it like whatever. You know, you're pimping, you're this, you're that. Nope. I don't fuck with anybody on any of those levels. And when I see that, other organizations see that, they won't do business with them. It'll give them a bad name, a bad face, like, oh, you're supposed to be this righteous warriors for your race or your organization or your city, and you're basically allowing guys who victimize women. It's no difference between raping or any of that, dude. You know, it's just a different form of abuse. You target the weak and you victimize the weak, but they're so desperate for numbers or so desperate for like some type of camaraderie because numbers do speak volume in prison. However, a few good men, that's all you need. Also, if you're from a certain town or city in Florida and you got a W on your tag for West Palm and you see somebody in there and he beat the shit, did some real heinous shit, it's on you now. You raise your hand and you handle that. And I was on that all the time. And the situation I was in was there was a dude named Adam. And I didn't know this at the time. He was from where I grew up, Boca Raton, Delray, Deerfield, Palm Beach, Broward area. And we were doing a hunger strike. And this dude ended up breaking the strike and dudes wanted to really get at him. And I didn't know his charges. I didn't know nothing about him at the time. And I went in the cell to try to like say, hey, look, he's from where I'm from. Just fuck, you know, you guys get the one-on-one fade and go about our business. And he starts talking to me and he tells me that, look, hey man, you know me, I'm from where you're from. You know, Lindsay, man, she's the reason I'm in here. I said, Lindsay, yeah. He said, yeah, she made me have to beat her with a tire iron. Usually I'm very emotional, disciplined, and I'll calculate things. Before I knew it, I had that dude pinned up on the cell wall, just strangling him, like saying, I guess they were telling me, I don't even remember it, saying like, come on, bro. Come on, treat me like you did Lindsay. Because this was a dear friend of me. She still is. I slapped him. I never even punched him. Just slapped him and choked him. And by the time they were like, stop, you're going to kill him. You know, I came to. And I was just humiliating and spitting on him. And being like, come on, bro. What's up? You made me do that. So if you're ever in this situation, press charges, keep charges, and we will handle that. Stay out. Stay free. us.